Lithuania is unfortunately in lockdown again, and among many other restrictions, most education has to be provided online. But what about pilot training? I always knew that at some point during our training, we'd probably not be able to have in-person lectures for a while. Unfortunately for us, that happened quite early in ground school already, still during our first subject. It was meant to only be a temporary measure because a student from a different group had tested positive for COVID-19, but the full nationwide lockdown came soon after that. But even when we were still back at the academy, there were of course measures in place to minimize the risk. For example, we had to wear a mask in all common areas and when entering the building. And for the very few students that still have in-person instruction, it's actually mandatory to wear a mask at all times. And there is also a mandatory temperature check when you enter the building for the first time in a day to make sure that no student shows up with any fever. The switch to virtual training was actually really efficient. It only took 2 days and we recommenced our studies online using Zoom. Now, personally, I'm not a huge fan of virtual training or virtual meetings in general. I love technology, but I just don't think it can fully replace human-to-human interaction. That's what I'd say is lacking the most at the moment during this time of virtual training as well. There's just no proper interaction between the students, and the interactions between the instructor and the student isn't as ideal and smooth as in person either. There's just always a delay. Virtual communication is not as precise. There are definitely some drawbacks, and I think that most of my colleagues agree that they'd much rather have in-person training. But at the moment, that's currently just not possible. But I really have to say that the instructors are doing their best to adjust to the situation. That's why I'd say that the actual quality of training, the quality of the instruction we're getting, has not suffered much, if at all. Our aircraft general knowledge instructor, Domantas, he even took the time to give us a virtual tour of some engines and components, which really helped to give a nice overview of all the things we learned in theory, and which helped bring the subject together quite nicely. The schedule was also adjusted for the fact that we'd be staring at a screen for the entire day, so we have more breaks and a bit less total hours per day of instruction, which really has helped to keep the focus up during virtual training as well. We also have monthly meetings with BAA Training representatives where we discuss our progress and get the chance to give some feedback. And the feedback is really heard as well. If we have any good suggestions or anything, and it is viable to do so, they also get implemented. But what about the exams? Well, the final subject exams at the flight school are just being held online at the moment as well. We're using the iPad we got given at the beginning of training with our online training tool, ATP Digital. And the only real difference between the exams in person and the exams the way we do them now is that they're not at the academy and they're not using pen and paper, but using the iPad. And we're of course also using a second device with the camera and microphone on all the time to monitor that we don't cheat. There is one real advantage to knowing that instruction will be online for the coming weeks though. Because of the equally bad situations in both Lithuania and Austria, travel restrictions were lifted, which meant that I could go home and spend a couple of weeks with my family. I am heading back soon to Lithuania again, because I'll be taking my first 3 exams at the authorities mid-December. And whilst this little excursion back home has definitely been fun, I also look forward to seeing my colleagues again and studying together with them. This was all for this video, a little update from the lockdown. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, if you have any questions or feedback or comments in general, leave a comment, send me a message, and I'll be sure to respond. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.